It was almost closing time. The diner technically shut its doors at 2 a.m., but everyone who worked there knew that anyone walking in that late was indeed exactly welcomed with open arms. Still, it happened sometimes, and that night it did. There were just two of us working, me and the chef in the back. The clock read about 1:50 when the bell above the door jingled and a lone man walked in. He was heavy-set, with jeans hiked way too high, a tucked-in gray shirt, and a brown jacket that had definitely seen better days. He had a thick mustache and square glasses, the kind of guy who gave off an odd mix of harmless and unsettling. I greeted him with the usual smile and asked if he wanted the bar or a table. Okay. He grinned way too much and said, "Table, please." I handed him a menu, telling him the kitchen was closing in 10 minutes. He looked it over for all of 5 seconds before saying he'd just have a black coffee and some French toast. He introduced himself to say his name was Noah. Lucky for him, that was an easy order for the chef to whip up. When I told the chef, he gave me this annoyed look that said everything without words. I just shrugged. I know. Out front, Noah waved me over again. He seemed chatty. Too chatty for nearly 2 a.m. He started off with small talk, asked if I was from the area, complained about the potholes, the usual local gripes. I gave him short answers. Told him, yeah, I grew up nearby, didn't specify where. He pressed a little, asking exactly what part of town I lived in. I stayed vague. Never tell anyone that, not strangers. He said he'd just moved here recently, and I could tell from the way he spoke and the awkward way he smiled that maybe this was his way of trying to flirt. I'd seen worse, especially back home in the South. It didn't bother me too much, just exhausting. By then, the diner was quiet. The chef brought the plate out himself since it was our last order. I served Noah his food, refilled his coffee, and then started wiping down the counters, getting ready to close up. He ate slowly, too slowly. I stayed behind the counter, not wanting to encourage any more conversation. I was drained and ready to go home. When he finally finished, I dropped the check off before he even asked for it, a subtle hint that it was time to wrap things up. He paid by card, gave me that same strange smile, and left. Once I cleaned up his table and gathered my stuff, I waved goodbye to the chef, who was locking up for the night, and stepped outside. There were 3 cars in the lot, mine, the chef's, and the third one I didn't recognize. It was an old silver sedan, maybe an early 2000s Toyota or Audi. Hard to tell in the dark. The windows looked tinted, or maybe it was just the night, but I couldn't see inside. I wondered if it was Noah's. I got into my car and started the 20-minute drive home. The road was empty, dark, quiet, the hum of my engine and the occasional flicker of a streetlight. Then, ding. My dashboard lit up with a tire pressure warning. I glanced down and saw my rear passenger side pressure dropping fast. 2015, 10. The steering wheel began to shake. Then the whole car started vibrating like crazy. I pulled over to the shoulder and stepped out to check. The tire was completely flat. And that S, when it happened, a sudden flash of headlights bathed the side of my car. Someone was pulling over behind me. My chest tightened. I jumped back into my car and locked the doors. The headlights grew brighter until they stopped right behind me. A moment later, there was a light tap on my window. I looked up and froze. It was Noah. He was smiling, the same too wide grin, and now he was wearing gloves. For safety, I'll call myself Cassie in this story. Noah leaned close to the glass and said, "Cassie, is that you? You okay?" He laughed a little, like it was some kind of coincidence we'd bumped into each other again. But I knew instantly this wasn't random. He did this. He motioned for me to roll my window down. I lowered it barely 2 inches, just enough to talk. He asked if I needed help. I said, "Yeah, flat tire." He tilted his head. "Which one?" "The back right," I answered. He started walking around my car, pretending to check. Kaya's back was turned. I quietly dialed 911. I set my phone on my lap, open line, praying the dispatcher could hear. He came back to my side and said, "I can fix it for you. Step out. I'll take care of it." I shook my head. "It's okay. My boyfriend's on his way to help me." The operator's voice was faint through the phone, but I heard it, and I hoped he didn't. I tried to speak normally, saying things like, "Yeah, I'm waiting for my boyfriend to come change the tire," hoping the 911 operator understood what I meant. He stared at me for a moment, the smile fading. "Okay." Then, without a word, he turned and walked away. My heart was pounding. "Okay," whispered into the phone. "He slashed my tire." "Okay, he's trying to get me out of the car." The operator asked for my location. I opened my GPS and read the road name, and that's when it happened. A shattering crack exploded to my left. The driver's window burst inward, glass raining over my lap. I screamed. He reached into the car. "I'm on the phone with the police," I yelled. "The police are coming." He looked at my phone, snatched it, and hurled it into the darkness toward the highway. Then he ran back to his car, the silver one, and sped off. Tires screeched, echoing down the road until he disappeared into the night. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I wanted to run after my phone, but with no flashlight and nothing but darkness, it was useless. I just locked my doors tighter and waited. Then, in the distance, sirens. I started crying, not from fear this time, but from relief. The red and blue lights pulled off the highway, and I waved my arms through the shattered window until they stopped. 3 police cars in total. They found my phone smashed to pieces. I told them everything, pointed in the direction Noah drove off, described his car. One officer went after him, while another changed my tire and escorted me home. A week later, that same officer called. He said they were still reviewing the diner's surveillance footage. That was the last I ever heard of it. I never went back to that diner again. I wasn't about to risk Noah, or whatever his real name was, finding me. I was 15 at the time, working a seasonal job at an amusement park up in upstate New York. This happened just last year, and even now, thinking about it makes my skin crawl. It was a crisp October Sunday, one of the final weekends before the park would close for the winter until reopening in May. Everything felt like a normal day at work. Hey, I had no clue how wrong I was. After checking in, I spent about 5 hours at my assigned station. By the time I glanced at my watch, it read 4:55 p.m. Only 5 minutes left in my shift. Relief washed over me as I began tidying up and gathering my stuff. That's when I noticed him. A man approached me. He had a scraggly beard, messy hair, and clothes that looked like they hadn't been washed in a while. A stained gray t-shirt and black sweatpants riddled with holes. Something about him instantly felt off. I told myself, just get through this last interaction and you're done. "Can I help you?" I asked politely. He didn't answer right away, just stared for a few seconds and kept flicking his head side to side like someone might be following him. It was unsettling. "Sir, can I help you?" I asked again, my voice now edged with impatience. Finally, in a shaky whisper, he asked, "Where are the bathrooms?" "Up the hill to the right," I replied, keeping my tone as cheerful as I could manage. He started walking in that direction, but as he did, he kept glancing back at me. I looked away, pretending not to notice, but the unease lingered. Moments later, one of my coworkers arrived to take over my spot. I grabbed my things and practically jogged across the park toward the employee area. I clocked out, changed out of my uniform in the bathroom, and then headed to the employee parking lot. I sat on a bench waiting for my ride. My friend Jordan, he was 17, usually picked me up, but felt like forever passed before his car finally pulled up. Before heading home, we decided to stop by a local diner for dinner. We both ordered cheeseburgers. As we ate, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The same man from the amusement park was there. He sat a few tables away, staring right at me. My heart skipped a beat. I quietly told Jordan what was going on. He shrugged it off. It's probably just a coincidence. Ben, don't worry about it. Yeah, I said, but my nerves weren't calming down. We finished our meal, got back in Jordan's car, and started the 35-minute drive home. At the first red light, my heart nearly stopped again. In the lane next to us sat a white Honda. Inside was the same man. He was staring at me, just like before. I told Jordan, and this time he looked worried too. When we reached our neighborhood, we circled the block a few times to make sure no one was following us. Once we felt reasonably sure the coast was clear, Jordan dropped me off at my house. I was alone. My mom and sister were at the mall, and my dad was away on a business trip. I went straight to my room, trying to shake off the day. Not long after I crawled into bed, I heard a noise at my window. Slowly, I got up and peeked outside. What I saw sent chills down my spine. Standing in my front yard, staring up at my window and smiling, was the same man. I grabbed my phone and called 911 immediately. By the time the police arrived, he was gone. That was the last straw. I quit my job at the amusement park as soon as the season ended. High Haven tea, seeing that man's scent, but the memory still makes my stomach tighten every time I think about it. Some experiences just stick with you forever. It was one of those wet, freezing nights when the rain doesn't just fall. It comes at you sideways. Within seconds, you're drenched, no matter how fast you walk or how tightly you pull your jacket closed. I had just finished a late shift at the little diner where I worked, and my bones felt heavy with exhaustion. The kind of tired where your eyes sting and your legs feel like they're removing through syrup. The streets were nearly empty, slick with rain, and the neon signs from the corner bar bled red and blue into the puddles. Their colors rippled as the water shifted, almost like the pavement itself was alive. I pulled my hood up and kept my head down, my bag thumping against my hip as I walked the 3 blocks to my apartment. The diner closed at 11 p.m., but cleaning up took forever. It's grease on the counters, floors to mop, coffee pots to scrub. By the time I clocked out and flipped off the last light, it was close to midnight. Everyone else had already gone home, and the bus I usually caught was long gone. I didn't usually mind walking. It was peaceful at night, in a lonely kind of way, a time to let my thoughts untangle. But that night felt different. It pressed on me, heavy and strange, like the air itself was watching. Halfway home, it started, that sensation. You know the one, the prickling at the back of your neck when you reach sure someone else behind you. I glanced over my shoulder. The street was empty. Just the rain hissing against the pavement and a few dim streetlights casting orange halos. I shook it off. I was tired. It's probably jumpy from the cold. I told myself all the things you were supposed to tell yourself when you read trying not to freak out. But then I heard it. Footsteps, soft but clear. Splashes echoing mine. I sped up, sauntered the footsteps. My stomach clenched, cut across the street without looking, puddles soaking through my sneakers. My keys were already in my hand when my building came into view. I reached the front door, fumbling with the lock. My hands were trembling from the cold. I told myself, always the cold. Finally, the lock clicked. I slipped inside and shut the door quickly behind me. The sound of the rain dulled to a hiss through the heavy wood. For a moment, I just stood there, breathing hard, the old building's familiar smell of damp carpet and peeling paint filling my nose. It's nothing, I whispered to myself. You're imagining things. I glanced at the frosted glass window in the door, the one that looks out onto the street. That's when I froze. There was a blurry shape outside, a person standing completely still. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. After a few seconds, the shape shifted, melting away into the dark. Maybe they'd left. Maybe they'd never been there. My heart was hammering too hard to tell. I locked every bolt on the door, top, middle, bottom, the metal scraping loud in the empty hallway. Then I climbed the stairs to my tiny apartment on the 3rd floor. My wet shoes squeaked on the steps. Outside, I dropped my bag by the couch and tried to breathe. My hands still shook as I filled the kettle and set it on the stove. Tea always helped. The normalcy of it, the clink of the mug, the hum of the burner was grounding. The kettle had just started to whistle when I heard it, a soft knock, not at my door, at my window. Every hair on my arms stood up. My heart slammed so hard I could feel it in my throat. Slowly, so slowly, I walked to the window and parted the curtain just an inch. There, standing on the fire escape in the pouring rain, was a man. He was grinning at me through the glass. Not a normal grin. It was too wide, too still, like his face had been carved into that expression. His wet hair clung to his forehead, and the rain ran down his cheeks like tears. I stumbled backward and nearly tripped over the chair. My phone was on the counter. I snatched it up, my fingers shaking so badly I almost dropped it, and dialed 911. "Someone's outside my window," I said, my voice a whisper, even though I knew he couldn't hear me. He's just standing there." The operator's voice was calm, practiced. "Stay on the line. Officers are on their way." But when the police arrived, the man was gone. The fire escape was empty, except for the rainwater dripping from the metal steps. A few muddy footprints, already smudged by the downpour, were all that was left. They searched the area, but didn't find anyone. They asked me to describe him, but what could I say? A man, wet, smiling. That's all I remembered. I didn't sleep that night. Not a second. I just sat in my kitchen, the lights on, tea going cold in the mug, staring at the window and waiting for morning. Every sound made me jump. Pipes creaking, the fridge humming, the storm still beating against the glass. When the first gray light of dawn seeped through the blinds, I felt like I had aged years. A week later, my landlord had a locksmith come out. He installed a new deadbolt and had the fire escape blocked off with a heavy chain. I should have felt safer. I didn't. Even now, months later, whenever it rains, the memory comes back. The hiss of water against metal, the knock on the glass, it's that smile. It creeps in at the edges of my thoughts, uninvited. In grocery lines, on the bus, lying awake at night. Sometimes I dream about it. The sound of the knock, the grin through the rain-streaked window, and wake up with my heart racing. I tell myself it was just a random man, maybe drunk, maybe lost, maybe a cruel prank. I tell myself that over and over, but deep down, I know some nights stay with you forever, okay? And some smiles aren't meant to be seen at all.